It's listener survey time. It's listener survey time. I promise never to sing on the show again. Visit wisesquirrels.com/survey now and do me a favor and let me know how I'm doing and how I can make the show better for you. Thanks. Are you familiar with body doubling? Body doubling is a way to work together to get things done. And I'm inviting you, Wise Squirrel, to join me and up to 9 other Wise Squirrels in a morning session of getting things done. I'm calling it Wise and Shine because we'll be doing these sessions in the morning. I'm going to give you all the details over at wisesquirrels.com/shine. And don't forget, Wise Squirrels is brought to you by The Root Down, an ADHD-inspired presentation and process to know, respect, and connect yourself. You can find out details about The Root Down at wisesquirrels.com. Welcome to Wise Squirrels, the podcast for late diagnosed adults with ADHD. I'm your host, Dave Delaney. If you haven't checked it out yet, I relaunched my email newsletter called The Nice Maker. Now, originally I had a Wise Squirrels email newsletter as well, but then I realized I bit off way more than I could chew. Something about ADHD, I think. And I decided to use Substack for The Nice Maker. So you can find it at nicemaker.substack.com. And I include articles and inspiration stories, some my personal stories, some that are inspired by others. But I'm including content for ADHDers, my fellow Wise Squirrels. So I do encourage you to check it out. I included some pretty cool things just in the most recent edition. And speaking of Substack and newsletters and stuff, the reason why I mentioned that too is because James Fell really inspired me to go for it, to use my own Substack as well. He's done very well with his, which I highly recommend you check out at jamesfell.substack.com. Now, James is the author of 2 volumes of best-selling sweary history books that are titled, ready? There's a curse word here. On This Day in History, Shit Went Down. That's right. This episode's explicit. So, put the kids away. James has bylines in the LA Times, Chicago Tribune, The Guardian, Time Magazine, and many others. And prior to switching to writing history, he wrote about fitness and the science of motivation. His previous 2 books are The Holy Shit Moment, How Lasting Change Can Happen in an Instant, and Lose It Right, a brutally honest 3-stage program to help you get fit and lose weight without losing your mind. So I began our conversation today by asking James about his diagnosis with ADHD at 53. That's right. James himself is a fellow Wise Squirrel. So you were diagnosed with ADHD at 53, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so I was diagnosed last year at 50. It's been been a pretty wild ride. So your background is in fitness, right? So you started writing as a fitness writer. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I'd done a master's degree in history.
Yeah.
That I finished in 96. Mm-hmm. And had thought about becoming a professor, but it just, with staying in Calgary and being married and having kids, it wasn't going to work out. So I ended up getting an MBA so I could get a job. And I worked in marketing till the age of 40. And I really didn't like the whole marketing thing. Like it was just, I did it for a paycheck.
Right.
But I'd really, because of the history background, I learned to love telling stories, learned to love writing, and the choice of becoming a fitness writer was a strategic marketing decision. My goal. Are we like recording now? Or are we?
Yeah, we're recording. Okay. Yeah.
So you might want to edit that part out. My goal was to become a full-time writer. And, I thought about, oh, well, I could write a novel. And then I did some research and I'm like, the likelihood of making it as a novelist, like making a living at it, was so remote that my marketing brain just said, yeah, okay, you need to make a better strategic decision here.
Yeah.
And fitness was something that, from a strategic marketing perspective, I looked at and thought, I can make a living doing that full time. Because, it was sort of like in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Right.
Most of the fitness writers were just not very good. And I thought, okay, there are enough opportunities via freelancing and writing books and maybe some consulting and speaking. Like, there's enough revenue opportunities writing about fitness, weight loss, etc., that I could make enough money at it to do it full time, because I wanted to quit my marketing job. And I still ended up doing a lot of marketing, but I was selling myself now, which was a lot more, tolerable, I guess. And so that's why I chose fitness, because I knew a lot about it. And I wasn't like, a recognized expert, but I was a good storyteller and I was a good writer, and so I interviewed experts, and within a year of starting, I had a column in the LA Times, and then a couple of years after that, I had a column in the Chicago Tribune that was getting republished all over the world, and I had books published and all that kind of thing. But it was it was not my true calling, and after about a decade or so, I started to get bored with it.
Tell me about the military history course lecturer that you had in college, who was the one that kind of inspired you to get excited about history.
Oh, okay. So the prof's name, I suspect, just knowing how old he was back then, that would have been 1991. So he's probably not with us any longer, I would guess.
Right.
But his name was Les Nuttall, I remember his name. And the course was, I think it was Military History from Napoleon to the Present. And he was just such a dynamic storyteller that, I'd been flunking out of university, and because I hadn't yet found my thing.
Right.
And I take this one course with this professor that was just told such great stories that it's like, okay, I'm actually really into this. This guy has inspired me to learn more about history. And it worked well because the only thing that I'd really sort of enjoyed reading when I was younger was, fantasy novels. Also science fiction, but I read a lot of fantasy. And this was like, okay, there's a connection here, because history is it's got the swords, not the sorcery, but this is a legitimate thing that I can study and get a degree in that is in line with, a previous passion of mine of reading fantasy novels. So I ended up becoming hyper fixated on it and taking, every possible history course that they would let me, and ended up, doing really well and eventually getting a master's degree in it.
And do you think at the time, did you realize, I mean, obviously you were thinking, focusing on history, but also on the fact that, obviously a good lecturer, I would imagine, would be a great storyteller, and being able to weave in great stories to get you interested in history. And by retelling those stories, whether it's, verbally or writing or whatever, you've got to be a good storyteller. So how does storytelling kind of weave into that? Like, did you realize, like stories, like there's a connection there? Or did you realize kind of later on?
I didn't give it a lot of thought. It was just, there was a light went off in terms of, finally, there is something that is kind of legitimately accepted, that I can study.
Right.
That my brain doesn't just say, I'm bored, that I have to constantly power through. Like, for the first time in my life, at the age of, 22, there was a passion for something academic, because I barely passed high school. This was back when it was really easy to get into university at the University of Calgary.
Yeah.
And so, I was a C student. I went to university. I didn't go to university right away. I worked, as construction labor, bartender, all that kind of stuff, bank teller, for a couple of years. Didn't like any of those jobs, and thought, okay, fine, I'll go to university, and promptly began failing because I wasn't interested in any of the stuff that I was learning. And then for the first time, I take this one course, and I'm like, this is interesting. And it allowed me to learn how to write because I read so much that, some of it had become ingrained. I mean, that Stephen King says that, the best way to become a good writer is to read a lot and to write a lot. And so I'd done the reading a lot part. And then when it came to taking history classes, it was like, okay, now I have an opportunity to read a whole bunch of different facts from a bunch of different sources and then weave it into my own narrative and actually create something and get good grades on it because, it took a while before I got good at it, but it was like I wasn't just determined to get good grades, but it was like I wanted to tell a good story in the papers that I was writing and actually entertain the professor and have the professor think that, hey, this was well written. This guy can write. And so it kind of took off from there. And then I remember my defense committee for my master's thesis defense, the out of department guy was from the poli-sci department. And he was the first guy to speak up during the defense. And he said he found my thesis very entertaining. I was like, all right, we're off to a good start here.
That's amazing. Well, have you thought about like the connection between storytelling as because you were a waiter, a bartender, even working in construction, or I know you planted trees as well, that kind of work. I mean, when you're kind of working in the field or forest, so to speak, you're probably just chattering to other people around you during the day. And then certainly as a good, speaking as a recovering server myself, I actually I love the work because of the interaction and conversation. So do you think that storytelling kind of played a role in those roles? I mean, a bank teller, probably not as much, but.
No, actually, I don't think it did because I really did not like any of those jobs. And well, I mean, if it did, it was indirect because I was always a daydreamer. I told myself stories that, I would like to insert myself into books that I'd read or, I had a very active imagination where I was often getting into trouble at work because I was distracted because I was daydreaming about somewhere else I would much rather be.
Yeah.
And so when it came time to start writing, it seemed very natural to me because I was taking that storytelling ability that had been running like a hamster on a wheel through my head for my entire life. And finally finding an outlet for it. Yeah. And, I would sometimes when I was hanging out with friends, I would, sort of be a chatty guy, but, not always a ton. But and one of the reasons why I went into marketing after doing my master's degree was because, I needed to get a job. And I had this master's in history, which wasn't really going to help much. And it was my mother that suggested that, okay, well, if you're not going to do a PhD, you could do an MBA, and that would make you very hireable. You would be able to make a good living at that.
Yeah, you could do a stockbroker, right? Like she was big into the stocks.
Oh yeah, and she wanted me to go work with her, but there wasn't enough Ritalin in the world to get me to do that job because, just the whole number crunching thing, it seemed so unreal. Like it's numbers on a screen and trade this and trade that and money is pretend. And I couldn't wrap my brain around it. Yeah. Whereas when it came to going into marketing, a lot of it was writing. And you research stuff and then you tell people what you think and you communicate. And so there was a lot of sort of strategic planning and thinking and writing. So I was able to use my creative writing skills to have a pretty good marketing career, even though was writing about boring shit like technology and whatever.
Yeah.
And do you mind if I swear on this?
No, not at all. Yeah.
All right. I'm the sweary historian. So yeah, boring.
Yes.
I did it because I had to do it. I
Yeah.
had a wife and kids that I needed to support. And so I powered through, but by the age of 40, it was like, I cannot do this bullshit anymore. And so I, with a very supportive wife, I ended up getting a part-time executive director role that paid quite well. And I did that for 2.5 years while I launched my writing career until it got to the point where I could do it full time.
And that's when you started writing about fitness. Your Body for Wife, I believe, came from. And by the way, Body for Wife is interesting because, or the story that I understand with it, because you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like you had set a date to propose to your wife and wanted to be fit, to be in good shape, for that big day. And by the way, like taking a step back, when I learned about this about you, I thought that's really interesting because with undiagnosed ADHDers, and again, generalizing, of course, being the novice that I am, but learning every day more and more, ADHDers tend to do very well when there is a date, when there is a deadline. When you have a deadline, like a hard date, that really does help you, even if it's an arbitrary date out of the air. So I was curious when I read about that you had this date in mind, I assume, to propose to your wife, and you wanted to get in shape ahead of that date. What are your thoughts on that?
That makes sense. I actually didn't know that that having deadlines helped drive people with ADHD, because it's not something that I've really done a bunch of research into myself. It's just like, oh, I have it far out. And but that makes sense, because what triggered it was I had been thinking about proposing, and I thought, okay, well, it was early September, and we just gotten back from a summer vacation, and I was thinking about proposing on Valentine's Day. And we got back from vacation, and we got our pictures back from the developer. It was that long ago. It was 1993.
Yeah.
And I'm looking and I'm like, wow, I just graduated from my undergrad. And I'm like, wow, I really put on the freshman 15 times like 3. Seeing these beach photos I'd gotten very flabby. And I thought, okay, it just popped into my head that, if I'm going to propose in mid-February, I should get in shape. And so I got sort of like halfway there. I didn't really set any sort of weight loss goals, but by mid-February, I was in quite a bit better shape. But I kept going, because by that time, I developed a passion for it. But it was a rough start. It was not, instantly, passionate about it. It was, the first couple of months were pretty rough. And, but I was at university all the time, and we had a really nice gym that was free because I was a university student. And after a couple of months, I was just starting to notice some differences, and I was making friends, and it was a nice break from class. And I started to really get into the social culture of it, and, got to know the people that worked there, and it was just, it was a university gym. So there was a lot of like young, attractive, fit people to hang out with.
Right.
And it was like, and I was losing flab and starting to, then I got into weightlifting. I was starting to build muscle, and it's like, I'm kind of starting to feel like I belong here. So it was rough to get started. But then, I ended up sticking with it long enough for the passion to kick in, where there's been ups and downs and changes about what it is that I'm most excited about, and now I'm very much more a home gym person. I don't want to be I used to love going to the gym, but now it's like, okay, I work from home. The idea of actually driving to a gym, it's like, fuck that. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Right. Well, but it's interesting too, because exercise is one of the best things. I mean, obviously that's great for anyone, but for ADHDers also, exercise is very important. And my understanding is that because we lack dopamine receptors, we don't get as much dopamine. And so we crave dopamine in different ways. And exercise is one of those ways that you can really produce a lot of dopamine, which then satisfies you. And then you find that you can, do a lot. You can be a lot more focused on what you're working on after working out or after receiving that dopamine. That's why also with ADHDers who are undiagnosed, addiction is quite likely. I mean, we're quite susceptible to that. And I've dabbled in plenty of beer drinking in my day. So finding an outlet. I think a key thing there too, by the way, is the fact that you found community at school around the gym. And I think, I think that's such an important thing too, is finding community in the things that you're interested in, because, had you just been there by yourself, you may not have kept going back.
I think at the time, like if I'd started by saying, okay, I'm going to buy a Bowflex or whatever and work out at home, never would have worked. Whereas now, like I have quite a nice home gym down in my basement, and I like to, I like working out by myself now because it's just so easy. It's, it's 15 feet from my office and I've got the discipline now, but, my favorite thing I would say is cycling. I like to run as well. Running is, I like what running does for me. I like the benefits, the physical benefits of it. But it's not quite as exciting as cycling. And another thing about the running is that I can do it all through the winter. You will not get me on an indoor bike. I've got to be outside. But for the winter, I can run hard all winter long, and then come spring, like when the snow melts, I can get on my bike and I'm automatically like in really good shape because I've been running so hard that, doing a lot of cycling, if you go and try running, you're going to suck. But if you run your ass off and then jump on a bike, it takes like a week and you're good. But awesome. I like this speed associated with running. There's a lot of adrenaline associated with it. The scenery changes so fast. It's like I go for a run and after like 12 kilometers, it's like, okay, I'm bored now. I don't want to do this anymore. Whereas cycling, I will go until I'm dead. It's like how much time do I got? Is my wife expecting me to come home and make dinner? Or am I utterly exhausted? Is my crotch hurt? That kind of stuff. So, I'll do like bike rides that are over 100 kilometers long.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I've been getting more and more into hiking. Like I really love just getting into the woods and just clearing my head and thinking through life, whatever. And I went on a hike at a state park not far from where I live, late summer. And I did this like, it's like a 5 mile loop or something, but there was like this backwood campsite. And so I thought, well, you know what, I'll do the loop and then I'll walk out to the campsite and go check that out. So I did that, but then realized like, oh wait, I'm not on a loop anymore. Now I have to actually turn around and back to the, so by the end of it, I had hiked like 21 kilometers, 13 miles and and it was like 30 Celsius, like heat, like it was like hot out. But I mean, I felt great, but similar. My wife was like, well, I thought you were going for like an hour hike.
I hope you had some water with you.
Yeah. Thankfully. Yes. I did have the Camelback, thankfully. So I was, but that last stretch was just like, oh my God, but it felt great, and having lived to tell this tale, feels good about that too.
But the other thing I like about the especially the more intense cardiovascular aerobic exercise like running, is that, one thing I do know about ADHD is the primary comorbidity is anxiety. And I had started to experience more anxiety the last few years because, it has been a shitnado of ass that we've been living through.
Yes.
that it really does just help. I don't know, it's probably an unscientific analysis, but I think when you exhaust yourself from a really intense workout, that it just kind of burns the anxiety off a bit.
Yeah. Well, it does help for sure. I think, and your sort of peak level stress, like so many others, was in 2020, right? Like kind of peak pandemic and the politics and all that good stuff that kind of led you to that level of anxiety, putting on 20 pounds too, I believe.
To a little more than that, actually.
Yeah.
But
tell me about that.
Actually, it got worse after the election, which was what led me to get diagnosed. And it was the thing that I figured out was that what was driving me crazy was my career success. And so at first, in 2020, there was 3 different things for me to worry about. One was, the US election. Even though I'm Canadian, I was just very stressed out about it. It's like, man, that Trump cannot be reelected. I knew that it was going to be horrible. And then, of course, COVID. Yeah, I was worried about catching that and having something like I wasn't worried about dying, but I was worried about being fucked up for a long time and having it, hearing horror stories about long COVID and stuff like that, and not being able to exercise and just having it having a really long-term negative effect on my health. And then the third thing was the career shift, was that my career was in the toilet, and then I started writing the history stories, and they were very popular right out of the gate, but they weren't making me any money yet. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to make money. And then shortly after the election, I launched a Patreon. And I was very nervous about doing that, because the thing about launching a Patreon is that what if you don't get very many paid subscribers? Say you get enough to make $500 a month, you still have to do the work to satisfy those paid subscribers.
Yes.
And I needed a lot more than $500 a month. So and yet the research was showing that only 3% of Patreon creators made over 1,000. And it's like, for this to be worthwhile, I need to make, several thousand a month. And I was like, I don't know if there's that many people that are willing to give me money. Whereas my wife was like, your fucking column was read by 5 million people last month. Launch the goddamn Patreon.
Yes.
And I said, okay, fine. So I launched it, and I hit $1,000 a month in 2 or 3 hours. And
wow, that's great.
And so within 3 months, I was in the top 30 for all writers on the platform, which led to Substack coming to me and offering me a boatload of money to switch platforms. They said, we're a much more writer-friendly platform, and we will give you a whole lot of money to switch. And I said, wow, that is a whole lot of money. Okay. So I switched to Substack. So all of a sudden, my financial woes are over. Yeah. And then I self-published the book, On This Day in History, Shit Went Down, and thinking, oh, this will probably do okay, but it's self-published, so I don't know how much money it's going to make. Well, my Facebook had been taking off like mad, and the book sold a stupid amount of copies. And when you self-publish, your margins are great. Yeah. And so I was making so much more money than I could have imagined possible. And I didn't even have to do any public speaking. I just had to stay at home and swear at people on the internet. And and it was just financially was going so well. And then you couple that with, okay, Trump is out and the insurrection failed. And now I'm doubly vaccinated and I'm making just an assload of cash. There's so much that's just going well. Why am I still so fucking stressed out? And it was actually getting invited to give a talk about the link between ADHD and creativity, a TEDx talk in Romania, that I said, okay, well, I should probably do some research on this. That this was the kind of holy shit moment that made me realize why I was still so anxious. And what it was that people with ADHD, compared to those who don't have it, you have them engage in a creative endeavor. And if there is a reward associated with that creative endeavor, those with ADHD will work much harder and be much more focused to get the reward associated with being creative.
Yeah.
And that was exactly what was happening to me, because being self-published and, I had the Substack where I could do creative sales pitches to get more paid subscribers, and I could see it pay off instantly. Yeah. It's like, I'm going to write something that's going to get me more paid subscribers, and I would post it to Facebook, or I would send it to my free subscribers, and the conversions would come through, and I would run the numbers, and I'm like, holy shit, that made me $1,000 and it took me 30 minutes. And, or I would write a creative ad to sell my self-published books, and I would see that instantly I sold hundreds of books, which made a whole bunch of money. And so I became obsessed over the money, because for 10 years I had made a very mediocre income. For a writer, I did great. Yeah. But compared to a marketing executive, not nearly so much. So all of a sudden it's like, I have lost time to make up here. It's like I'm shitting gold bricks. And I became very obsessed over the numbers I became very obsessed over making money, because like literally everything I did after 10 years of trying all sorts of different things and only making, moderate income, all of a sudden everything I did worked. And I could get more paid subscribers, and I could sell more books, and my income went up fivefold, and then it went up, tenfold. Yeah. And so I was just so focused on that I was a ball of anxiety, and I couldn't do anything else, because how can I, go and work out when instead I could sit at my computer for an hour and make a whole bunch more money.
Right.
And so it became very tough to pull away from that. And it was the Ritalin that helped, because it allowed me to not obsess over it. Because what I do is I get up in the morning and I will write and work and promote and all that kind of stuff. And then by about, noon or 1 o'clock, that's like, okay, it's time to do other shit. It's time to work out, buy groceries, meal plan, housework, that kind of stuff. Yeah. It's what allows me to step away from my computer and do the other things that allow me to have a balanced life and not be stressed out. Yeah. But constantly sitting at your computer trying to figure out more and more ways to make more and more money that I didn't even need. Yeah. That it was just like, okay, if I want to buy oceanfront property on Vancouver Island, I need that money. But that's kind of my dream. But it's not something that I was struggling to pay bills or anything. Yeah. That it became this obsession that got me into this anxiety spiral. That I realized, no, this didn't have anything to do with Trump or COVID anymore. This was about, being obsessed about my career. And it was the whole hyperfixation that the medication allowed me to not be so hyperfixated anymore. And then the next sort of step associated with that was a big book deal. So I did 2 books self-published. They did really well. And then, so my agent was able to get me a huge book deal with Bantam. And so the dynamic there changed because they gave me a huge advance. And now I'm looking at, earning out my advance. It's not a debt that you have to pay back. But before I ever make another penny off of these 2 books, the advance has to earn out. And it was a really big advance, so it's going to take a long fucking time. And I'm going to have to sell a lot of books. And not only that, but the margins on the per book is a lot lower because it's not self-published any longer.
Right.
So the obsession of chipping away at this giant advance is far less than it was when it's like, every book I sold was X amount of dollars, and you sell 100 books and it's like, oh, wow, that's quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
So that helped. And then now the latest thing that I'm actually kind of ironically grateful for is Facebook fucking over all page owners by killing our reach. So that was, I have over 300,000 followers on my Facebook page. And that was where 90% of my sales came from. And sometime around last spring, which interestingly was right when I unpublished my self-published books, in order to start promoting the new Bantam version. Was right around when I saw my reach go to absolute shit. And it went down by about 80%. And I'd seen ebbs and flows in the Facebook algorithm. But this was not that. This was they just killed it, and not just for me, but I have a lot of friends with big Facebook pages. And all of us, our reach just got absolutely nuked, and it's only gotten worse since then. And so I made a decision, fuck this place. I'm done with it. Like 90% done with it. Because it was just not paying off anymore. I had posted a piece on January 1st saying that I have been posting to Facebook 4 or 5 times a day for 13 years in order to promote my work. And it has rewired my brain, not in a good way. But it's no longer paying off financially, and it's no longer paying off in the dopamine hits either, because my interaction has just gone to shit. And so what I've decided to do instead is that the one thing that's always continued to do well is e-newsletter, that I have really high open rates. So I decided, all right, I am going to focus on my Substack e-newsletter instead, because it's not dependent upon the algorithm. And you don't have to babysit it. You don't have to try and game the algorithm. People don't expect nearly as much interaction with an e-newsletter. And so I made this big announcement on January 1st, posted it to Substack, and then I paid Facebook to boost the post promoting this announcement that basically said, fuck Facebook, I'm moving largely to Substack. And it worked. I paid him like $1,500, and I got, I went from 21,000 to 33,000 free subscribers in a matter of a few days. And even though I wasn't asking for new paid subscribers, I got hundreds of new paid ones that more than paid for the campaign. So
smart.
The campaign was actually really profitable. The ROI was huge, at least 4 to 1. And so I'm going to continue to run these types of ads to milk my face, because the ads go to my 300,000 plus Facebook followers, to continue to convince as many as I can to go to Substack, because it's much more reliable. They're going to get every new story. They're going to get an email. Whether they read it or not is up to them. But it'll allow me to continue to sell books a lot better, to grow that. and I'll get more paid subscribers. But also very important for me is that because my reach on Facebook has been killed, being ADHD, I was pretty addicted to Facebook because that was where all the money was coming from. And it was not just giving me financial rewards, but dopamine rewards. But now both of those are gone. The financial rewards of Facebook are dead, and the dopamine rewards are also gone.
Yeah.
So it's allowing me to make a pretty clean break where I haven't given up on Facebook 100%. I've gone from, 25 to 30 posts a week to 3. And it's largely promoting when I have a new story that's on Substack, I will link it on Facebook and say, here you go. By the way, while you're there, fucking subscribe because Facebook sucks now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that, strategically, financially, it made a lot of decision, but emotionally, it made a lot of sense for me too, because I have been trying to restrain my Facebook addiction for years.
Yeah.
And it finally took the company screwing me over to break the habit.
It's something that I've been telling people for many years, especially earlier on in my digital marketing space, that when I was doing that, and even as a speaker for Google, I would remind people that like you're building your business on rented land, like you don't own it. Like email marketing, you own, assuming you're backing up that list. Yeah. But at least with email, you can email your friends, fans, followers, and let them know, hey, we're moving over here now, and hopefully they'll follow. Otherwise, if Facebook or whatever the social network is, it locks you out. And I learned this back in 07 or 08, maybe. I went to use Twitter on a Friday, and it said, your account has been suspended due to suspicious activity. And I didn't do anything. And I'm like, what the hell? It was a mistake. And so, but it was this realization. I actually spoke to Nora Young, who runs Spark on CBC, about it. She's an old podcasting comrade and broadcasting comrade. But yeah, we talked about it because I had this realization that, Twitter owned my Rolodex, so to speak, and now I couldn't contact anybody. And I didn't know some people's real names because Twitter could be anonymous. Right. This is back when Twitter was actually something worth going to. I don't advise that anymore. But it is interesting. So Substack seems like a logical, smart move for you. Are you doing like retargeting to target people that go to your Facebook page elsewhere online? So like remarketing, retargeting, or?
No, it's just, I've just been
boosting
the posts to people who already follow. Yeah. Because those are people, they already know who I am. They followed me. They like my work. Yeah. It's just, and the thing is, when I made that, I've only done one ad so far, and it worked out so well. Like I went from 21,000 to 33,000 free. Yeah. Plus got a few hundred paid with one ad. And it was the important announcement. But I realized that, when I was selling my book, I had to hit people again and again and again to convince them to buy. And I know that I'm going to have to hit people again and again to convince them to subscribe. And a lot of people, it's like, oh, well, I don't want to give you my email. I get so much spam or whatever. There's also an app, so, you could use that. But the thing is that I was told years ago it was actually at a fitness conference, and this guy was a fitness marketing expert, saying that Facebook is you can't trust social media. You need to build an email list. Yep. And I shrugged it off because it was so expensive. The numbers for MailChimp were stupid. And I wasn't making a lot of money back then. I thought MailChimp was a ripoff. And I didn't have a product to sell. I was living off of freelancing. And my books were traditionally published, so I didn't have a lot of motivation to do that either. Then you get something like Substack comes along, which I think has totally changed the landscape for people in two different ways. I think that, you don't necessarily need, like I used to have my own blog on a WordPress website.
Yeah.
And it was a pain in the ass. The user interface sucks. You have to pay a lot for hosting. You have to worry about hacking and crashes and all this kind of stuff. And, if I had a blog post that was really popular, the website would crash. And it was such a pain in the ass. And then you've also got, if you want to email people, MailChimp and others were so expensive. It's like, how the fuck do you justify this cost? I don't remember what it was, but I was like, no, I can't afford that. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
And now we've got Substack where everything's free. It is both a blog and an e-newsletter at the same time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost a damn thing. And you don't have to worry about, it's always, they've got their own IT people to make sure it's always running, it's always up. You own your content, you own your email list, you can download it at any time. They make their money because they want you to go paid. And if you start having paid subscriptions, which I do, and I make quite a bit of money from, they take a sizable chunk. I think they end up taking about 18%. So they have a lot of very big names with huge followings making a ton of money, and they get their taste.
Yeah.
So that's how it works.
It's kind of a win-win.
And yeah, it's win-win, and it's easy. It's the UI is, I treat computers like a glorified typewriter. So for me, just to be able to, copy and paste directly over from Word, maybe throw some photos in or whatever, it works well for me. Yeah. And so I just want to continually, every few weeks I'll come up with a new type of enticement campaign to get more and more people from Facebook to subscribe. And, I've set a goal by the end of the year to have 100,000 free subscribers. And that will more than make up for the fact that Facebook has killed my reach.
Yeah.
And I also, Substack is it doesn't have that addictive engagement factor. Like with Facebook, you're always trying to game the algorithm, get more engagement. Whereas with Substack, it's just so much more straightforward. You might want to, you will engage in some of the comments and stuff like that and reply to questions and people want to hear from you, but the degree is so much less. And with a place like Substack or Patreon or whatever, you're not expected to constantly be at everyone's beck and call.
Yeah.
People are going there to read you, not necessarily to have you be beholden to them like they are with social media.
True.
And overall, I think social media is kind of dying. I think people are getting sick of it.
I agree.
It's had its day.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of that is that it sucks now. You look at your Facebook feed and you're getting, the reason why Facebook killed our reach was to drive advertising revenue.
Yeah.
And it worked. They killed our reach, and then a bunch of companies with deep marketing pockets started paying. So a lot of the stuff that you're seeing in your feed now is shit from some content farm that that paid for you to see it. And you're not seeing what you liked and followed. You're not seeing what you engage with. You're seeing some of it, but a lot of it is crap. So people don't care about that anymore. There's an author, science fiction author, Cory Doctorow, came up with the term "inshitification" of social media.
Yeah.
And he wrote an excellent post that was in Wired magazine a year ago that described all of this. He talked about TikTok, and he went into detail about TikTok and Facebook and Twitter, about how it's not fun anymore. It's not giving us what we want anymore. And it's killing itself because people are just tuning out. It's like, you know what? Facebook used to be great, and it's just not now. So why would I want to spend time there when it just sucks?
Yep.
And it was, they had to do it for financial reasons, I guess, but I think they're all dying because it's become, toxic from a spreading fascism point of view, but it's also just not, we're seeing these shitty content farm paid posts now instead of what we've chosen to see. And I'm okay with the death of social media.
I'm with you on a lot of that. And now even I hate to bring it up, but since we're talking about it now, Substack's not without its own controversies these days. And I don't know if you're hearing any of that from your.
I have not addressed that personally, but since you asked, I will address it. and I have two things to say about that.
Yeah.
One is that one of the reasons why I haven't publicly written about it, I probably will at some point, but is because other people already have addressed it very well.
Yeah.
And there's two ways to go. That yes, they are platforming Nazis. And there are Nazis that are making money off of Substack with their via their paid subscriptions, and I mean, without getting into all the details, I understand why they're doing it. But the big one is that content moderation is both very expensive, it has no ROI, and it can lead to a slippery slope because it's never good enough if you start deplatforming certain people, then it's like, well, what about this one? What about this one? The slippery slope argument is not a great one, but it's still, it's a reality that's part of the overall argument of why I can understand why they don't want to do it. But the other thing is that, I'm seeing people that are saying that, okay, Nazis will invade every single space. And if the people who are anti-Nazi leave, then they will drive us out of everywhere. So we have to not allow ourselves to be driven out of this space, or it will become nothing but Nazis. Which again, I mean, there's some holes in that argument, but that's the one that I'm choosing to side with. I also understand if someone says, well, Substack is platforming Nazis, so fuck this place, I'm out of here. I respect that decision. I admire you for doing it. So that's the one thing that I would say about it. The other thing is that you cannot trust a single thing that I have to say about whether or not you should stay on Substack. And the reason is motivated reasoning. I have motivated reasoning coming out the ass because I make a lot of money off of Substack. And if I left, if I decided to go somewhere else, I can't take all of those paid subscribers with me. I have to convince every single one of them to resubscribe. And I've been there with the move from Patreon to Substack. When I went from Patreon to Substack, only like 30% re-upped because that's just, it's the inertia thing. So if I make the high moral standards decision to move to another platform, my income is going to take a massive hit. And I'm seeing that a lot of people that are moving, that are taking their big subscription bases, a lot of them are free. They have free newsletters. They don't have paid subscribers, or if they do, they don't have a lot, or maybe they just don't need the money. But it would be a massive financial hit for me to do it, and so therefore I am financially motivated to believe those that say we should stay and fight. And so as a result, yes, I acknowledge that I'm financially motivated, and therefore I have a bias to believe those that say no, don't leave. And so that's why I can't even trust what I say myself, because I know that there's a significant financial reward. But, you look at, okay, Dan Rather's still there, and Dan Rather's a good guy. Heather Cox Richardson has a massive following, and I'm sure makes a lot of money. Robert Reich is still there. I follow all of them. They're not leaving. And so I say, well, fine, if it's good enough for them to stay in and talk about how much Nazis suck, then I can do it too.
Yeah, and I think the great name for the article, when you do write it, should be called Nothing But Nazis. which sounds like a Toys R Us for like racists or something. So I want to take a step back for a minute and talk a little bit about your use of Ritalin without diagnosis in college, not as obviously as a party drug or anything like that.
Yeah, no, but it was not a party drug.
No, you were trying to kind of get through things. But and this is a topic that's come up before, where I've learned that like a lot of college kids actually get their hands on some sort of stimulants as a way to help study for exams and so forth. But it's interesting because it affects different people differently. Mm-hmm. And obviously those with ADHD, they're like, you're like suddenly, oh, well, hold on. Like this might actually help me.
Yeah. It wasn't
being diagnosed.
It wasn't a stay awake drug.
Right.
This wasn't a cram all night drug. Mm-hmm. It was a translation device. Mm-hmm. Because it was my first semester of MBA, and there's a lot of mandatory classes that I had to take that my brain could not be wrapped around. Operations management and accounting were the two that I couldn't decipher it. It was like reading fucking Klingon.
Right.
It made no sense to me whatsoever.
What about Krebs cycle?
Well, that came later.
Yeah.
So that was without going into detail how I got my hands on some Ritalin, and I would take it. And yeah, it wasn't like, okay, it's 3 a.m. and I need to keep studying. This was the middle of the day. I was well rested. It's just I needed to take this so I could understand it, so I could decipher it. And it was like I took it, and then 30 minutes later, it's all of a sudden it's like, wow, this is actually sinking in. I actually get this. And it was the most bizarre sensation.
Yeah.
To just feel my brain change from 1 minute to the next, to when it's like all of a sudden the words on the page and the numbers on the page started to make sense. And it was bizarre, but I didn't have any idea at the time that I was ADHD. Like I should have clued in. That should have been a clue, but I was oblivious. It didn't make any sense to me. And I think it's because I didn't understand what ADHD was.
Sure.
I didn't know what it was or how it could manifest.
Well, you probably also assumed that your peers, other students or friends who were also taking Ritalin, you were probably assuming they had the same effect. I mean, it has, if you're neurotypical, it's going to affect you differently than if you're neurodiverse, or certainly with ADHD. So, results may vary, I guess.
Yeah. So it was bizarre the way it worked. So it got me through my first semester. In my second semester, I didn't have classes that were nearly so difficult. And then in my second year, I got to basically choose what I was doing, and it was I didn't take it again. I didn't need it again. And then years later, many years later, like a decade later, I've decided that, okay, I want to be a fitness writer. And in order to do that, I should have some type of certification. So I went and got the most respected, most difficult certification there was, the Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist, which is basically a gigantic textbook that I had to memorize. And there was a lot of stuff that was easy for me because it was, stuff about nutrition and exercise and technique and motivation. All this stuff I was interested in. It was easy to understand. I didn't have a problem with it. But once we started getting down to, more cellular level Krebs cycle bullshit, again, it was like, I don't get it. Like, I just can't, no matter how many times I read it, it doesn't sink in. Yeah. And so again, sourced myself some Ritalin and again, translated Klingon into English. And passed the test.
Yeah.
So that was, but then it was, again, that was like 2008, 2000. Yeah, I think it was 2008. And then didn't take it again for, years and years until it felt like I was flying apart at the seams a couple of years ago with anxiety and because I'd become obsessed over my work.
It's really interesting with the anxiety as a comorbidity for ADHD because, I didn't know this either. And in fact, my this year, so since being diagnosed last year, I met with my doctor. I was diagnosed and prescribed some stimulants, and results may vary with that too. So like we were trying different things at different doses for different periods of time. Wasn't really seeing the results I wanted to see. So I started seeing a psychologist with an expertise in ADHD. And so she changed my meds and the dose, and we started along a better path. But because of anxiety with my own kind of work and things like that, we paused everything and she started treating me for my anxiety. And then she reintroduced the stimulants once we got the meds right for the anxiety. And so now we're like at this point here, we're like experimenting with the dose of the stimulants, but the meds for the anxiety have definitely been helping me. So, plus therapy as well. So that's an interesting thing because like, Dr. Russell Barkley who's kind of a wonderful resource and expert in this space. He reviewed like multiple studies and found that the average person with undiagnosed and untreated ADHD can have a 13-year less life expectancy than somebody with treated who's getting treatment. So it could be up to 13 years less. It's important to see your doctor and get diagnosed and treated.
I think that, there's probably a lot of reasons for that. And I think addiction may contribute to it.
100%.
And I've had, struggles with, I don't want to say struggles, but I've definitely had to be careful with my alcohol intake. And the, also with, food, the thing about the only thing that really helps me control my appetite is running. I have to run a lot in order to just presate those reward pathways in my brain so that they're not craving booze and junk food. And that's the only way that I've ever been able to keep my weight under control.
You're getting the dopamine.
So I'm pretty good at self-reflection and realizing that I've taught myself a lot of tricks on how to deal with this but still the medication was the big one for helping me not obsess over work, because it's still a bit of an issue. Like, for example, this new book came out early October and I wanted it to be a big success. So of course I spent a few months promoting the shit out of it. And so that was, there was some work obsession going on there. And then now I've got this transition to trying to get as many people over to Substack, and seeing the part of the issue is that one ad campaign worked really well. So of course it's like, got to do more.
Right. Yeah.
So I have to be careful that I don't get sucked down that rabbit hole again. But the one nice thing is, okay, I'm 55 years old, and like I said, I could stop working now and be fine. I'd never have to work again, financially speaking. And I keep also I had a major health scare last September and had to have surgery. And had to work through that with the book launch, which was a drag. And I'm still recovering. It's and still getting back to. It was shitty. I'd finally gotten back to running, and I ran a half marathon, And then right after the half marathon, I had this nothing to do with the race. Like I had a really good time. I was like, yeah, I'm back to running, and I'm losing this COVID weight and everything's great. And then all of a sudden I had this major health issue and needed to get surgery and all that kind of shit. And so that totally derailed that. But now I'm slowly crawling back to my fitness again. And the health issue has kind of given me a new perspective as well, where it's like, I'm here for, may not be here for a long time. It's not, it's not cancer. It's the surgery solved the problem, but it makes you not quite so certain about what comes next. And the last thing I want to do is die with a whole bunch of money in the bank that I never got a chance to spend. So it has helped me in terms of just relax a little bit more and focus on my fitness and my health and having fun and doing some more traveling and things like that. And the thing is that, I can still, without obsessing and without having to work too hard, still make a lot of money. And so there's the difference between making a lot and making a ridiculous amount. And making the ridiculous amount is going to drive me crazy. and whereas, so it's like, I've had to convince myself that it's okay to only make a lot.
Hey, that's not a bad problem to have.
Yeah. So it's, and the funny thing is that, I've told some people is I went into writing to get rich, which is the stupidest thing that you will ever hear.
Yeah.
Because it is not a career that is conducive to making a lot of money.
Right.
But I had delusions of grandeur. And the thing is that I knew that if I was ever going to make a lot of money, that writing was going to be it. And the reason why is the whole product versus service type of income that you can generate. That I knew that if I could create a product that people wanted, that the sky was the limit. My first book didn't sell that great. I made, I don't know, maybe $3 an hour. And my second book, I made maybe $8 an hour. And I don't know what it is on the latest book, but it's a hell of a lot more than that. And I didn't run the numbers, but it's, if you have a product that takes off, it doesn't require any additional work except for, some of the promotion, but you can make more and more money off of it. And I felt that I had what it took, that if I kept experimenting and trying, that eventually something would hit. It only took 12 years and a very well-paid supportive spouse.
Yes.
But eventually I found the niche that took off for me. And now it's not just books, but also Substack. Like every month, I get a good income from my paid subscribers. And if my paid subscribers triple, I don't need to do 3 times as much work.
Yeah.
I need to do the exact same amount of writing to satisfy those paid subscribers. And the only real work is like, the promotion to get more and more, but that's not a lot. That's just, your sales and promotion shit to get more and more, but there's no additional, the stuff that I write for my paid subscribers is still a product that where the sky is the limit, that, I could make, I could have way more paid subscribers and make way more money, but it doesn't mean I need to write more content for them. And so that was why I went into it. But now it's like, okay, well, we'll just, how much is it enough? And I've kind of figured out that I can not stress too much and not work too hard and make a very good ongoing income that will finance, nice vacations and help our kids buy houses and that kind of stuff. And I can live my life and write what I want to write instead of writing what I think is going to sell.
Yeah, which is really important for writers. Absolutely. James, this has been awesome. Are there any questions, anything I didn't ask that you would like to share? Or
No, I think I've rambled a lot in true ADHD fashion. So I think we covered it all and then some.
Yeah, no, this has been really great, and I wish you all the best moving forward. It sounds, and I'll make sure that to include links to everything we talked about today, so that folks can find you and connect with you. Where can they? Where is the best place for folks to check you out, subscribe, and learn more about Mr. James Fell?
I mean, the easiest thing you could just Google my name, James Fell, and you'll find it all. But jamesfell.com is my website. And there's links to buy my book there. If you click on blog from jamesfell.com, it takes you to my Substack, which is jamesfell.substack.com.
Cool. Well, thanks a million, man. This has been great.
Oh, thanks so much, Dave. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Hey, thanks for listening to Wise Squirrels. It has been amazing to share this with you. Best way to show your support for the show, leave us a review, follow the show, and share it with the people in your life. We drop new episodes every 2 weeks, so stay tuned for that. Plus, drop by wisesquirrels.com or click the link in the podcast description, and you'll find a lot of different resources like articles, an assessment, a newsletter, lots of good stuff over at wisesquirrels.com. So drop by. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you next time. Take care.